All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome. This is our first, and I'm sure not our only, on-site remote live show. Brandon, right here. Thank you very much for inviting me. I appreciate that. We have a couple of guests already lined up. I will let you know in advance that we only have one microphone. I could not figure out how to do the two channels. This is, like I said, the first time that I've ever traveled with all of my gear, and I even told Kofi, I was like, this is not going to work, because it just never, ever works. But I hope you guys are able to tune in and watch for a little while. For those that don't know, my name is Brad. I'm the host of Theology Nights. Just to give you a quick overview of how I arrived here, Brandon and I connected, it's been over a year and a half almost now. We chatted via Skype, and we had a good conversation. And then through that time, we just connected we kind of have the same circle of people, and we are just among like-minded brothers, and so we've been able to labor aside one another and to promote sound theology and to build up the local church, and that's how I am now sitting here. He gave me the honor of coming and talking, and I wanted to be here last night, but I was speaking at a conference locally at a church that does it's called RefCon is what it is, and we did the 5 points, and I spoke on irresistible grace. That was at 10 o'clock last night, and that's when I got home, and then I left at 7 this morning, and then I got here at 2:30 or something like that. So it's been a long 2 days, but I'm excited to be here. So do you want to come up first, Brandon, and chat for a moment? And if anybody, if for you guys here too, and then those of you guys watching on camera too, we do have like an actual live crowd. So if you guys want, you can share. If you don't follow the Theology Nights Facebook page, just search Theology Nights, or subscribe on the YouTube channel. Just search for Theology Nights as well. So Brandon, why don't you introduce yourself and just talk for a couple moments about the conference and the work that went into it.
So my name is Brandon Scalf. I used to run the ministry Dead Men, which is how we kind of came to work together, and we decided to put on a conference that initially was going to be a Dead Men conference. But if those of you who are listening have paid attention at all, we shut that down, and so it was a no-brainer to ask Brad to come and do this. Also, I wish he was here last night. We could have used both his knowledge and his tech skills, but there's next year. But no, so we planted a church here in Indianapolis called Cruciform Bible Church. Our first actual service will be November 10th. So if you live in the Indianapolis area and you're listening and you don't have a church home, come hang out. It's at Bethlehem Lutheran Church in Broad Ripple. But since we planted the church and Deadman was no more, but we still had this conference in motion, we just decided to kind of put it under the same umbrella, kind of do it as a church ministry. I don't know if that's the way it'll always be, but that's just kind of the way it worked out this time. But through Deadman, we just have met a ton of amazing people that I never would have known otherwise. So all these speakers, outside of Dustin Binge, I've just worked with through Deadman, or have met them through people who have worked with Deadman. And so, once again, no brainer to ask all of them. They're all very talented preachers and just godly men who I would trust to open the Word of God. I mean, I realistically didn't even tell them exactly what to preach. I just said, hey, this is my idea for the conference, the overall vision. I trust you, just go with it, and then we'll see what happens. So I just believe they have a heart for the gospel, and we wanted to Indianapolis is a hard place to do ministry, as I'm sure all places are. That was kind of sounded like a weird, conceited thing to say, as if not all places are hard. But, there's just a need, as everywhere. I'm just going to not say Indianapolis to alienate, but a need for gospel-drenched, gospel-purchased, Christ-purchased preaching. And so I wanted to deliver to the city of Indianapolis as best I could the best gospel preachers that I know. So that's kind of, it's not much deeper than that. I love Jesus and I love these dudes, and I wanted to create a platform where they could share the gospel message. And it's been a long weekend, so my brain's a little fried. I don't know if you had more pointed questions, that might be better.
Well, let me ask one question. All right, so two questions then. What's the overall goal with the Cruciform Conference from a, let's see, it's 2, 3, 4 years? I'm assuming that you want to do it more often. So what's the overall goal? And then 2, how did you arrive at the cross-purchased life as the theme for the conference?
So first, the overall goal. Well, the overall goal, obviously, the standard Reformed answer, right, to glorify God. So that's certainly number one. But secondly, the goal really, like I said, is just to get as much Christ-drenched content into the world, or in this, Indianapolis. And I wish it was deeper than that. I just love Jesus, and I want people to love Jesus, and I just wanted to do that. And I don't think there is any really overall goals. Like, I don't have like a set goal for where I want to be in 3 years. I just want to, as often as people volunteer their time to come preach the gospel, I want to create avenues where people can do that. So I was running around here. I didn't actually preach this time. Just running around, filming it, trying to make sure things were in order, because I just believe in gospel preachers and gospel preaching, and I just want the best men for the job to do that, and it just didn't make sense for me to do it this weekend. So, but man, we were blessed. Yeah. So, no overall goal. We are going to do it next year. We have some confirmed guests, and also, I haven't really announced anything, so I guess this will be a way to go. I may not be. I don't know if something failed here, but
no, you're good.
Okay. This is like the real deal. So next year, we're going to do holiness as the theme. And Justin Peters has given us the thumbs up there, so he'll be here. Cole said today, I don't know if he was serious about it, that he's down. What's that?
I'm in.
He's in.
That's 2 now.
Yeah, so that's 2. And then there's some other people that you'll love, but I haven't gotten 100%, so I'm not going to say those names. But it'll be cool. And then we also want to get some more local pastors involved. I feel like that maybe was a failure this year, that we didn't get more local pastors involved, just because, one, I'm a little newer to the city in terms of like coming back after a long hiatus. And then just also with Deadman, obviously, reached all throughout the United States. And so all these guys come from all over the place. And so I wanted to create this opportunity for them. But next year, I think that was an oversight that I should not have had. To include local pastors was a failure. But we'll do it next year. And so overall goal, that's kind of what we're doing. We're just going to keep doing it till nobody wants to hear about Jesus anymore, which hopefully is never. And then we're going to keep doing it, right? We're going to keep doing it even though no one wants to hear. So, and then the second question was cross-purchased, the cross-purchased life. I've went through a lot of personal stuff. Over the last year, I got diagnosed with some health stuff, and it's really messed with my cognitive abilities. I got diagnosed with like Lyme disease, and sometimes it's hard to grab words, and there's just this weird fog, and neurological stuff, vision stuff, muscle stuff, bone stuff, and man, like I didn't know what it was for a long time, and still struggling with it. I was pounding pills this whole weekend just to get through, but through all of these journeys and trying to figure this out, it really pushes you to the brink. And I was just talking to somebody out there about this book called Remember Death by Matthew McCullough. It's actually really good. It's called Remember Death, The Surprising Path to a Living Hope. And I was reading it. I was getting all my MRIs done, all my blood tests, not knowing what was going on. And it was such a breath of fresh air. And just basically his thesis is, if you don't understand death, you don't understand the gospel. And we don't understand death in America because we push it off to the side. So we literally just, you start talking about death at the dinner table, you're a weird guy, right? You're just that guy you don't invite over. But that's not the way it used to be. It used to be your grandparents would die in the home, you'd take care of them when they got sick, you buried them when they died. But because we stick them in hospice or the ICU, and then you don't let the kids see them when grandma's sick, we don't understand that death is this thing that we all face that like is coming for us. And then like all the miseries that lead up to that like is purchased by Jesus. And that was a weird thing for me to really try to think about on a deep level, right? Like, so teaching the Bible over the years, it's like I can say that would have been easy for me to say, but to like really feel like all these miseries in life are purchased, not just the joys and the happiness, but these other things are purchased. And so the cross purchased life, like it's because of the death of Jesus that the bad can be made good, right? Yeah. That it all works out. And so it gripped me personally. And so like, I don't know how, artists do their thing or whatever, but whenever I think of something, it's always fueled from like some deep thing that's resonated with me. And because it's the gospel, I know that resonates with all my buddies who preach. And so I just was like, hey man, how can we do this? And I think it's just been a tremendous weekend. And I wish I had more energy, but other than that, I mean, I've been fueled up by all these guys. I mean, it's just, it's fantastic. So I'll end there. But.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it. And I'll just say, I won't reveal, of course, all the details of our private conversations, but, just he and I behind the scenes, like the attitude that he just displayed right now is the same attitude that he's always had with me. Personally, just sort of like saying, I'm tired, but, and always looking to Christ and always working hard. And so, even if this is your first time hearing Brandon, like he lives the life. He really does. And so I appreciate you. I appreciate your partnership and your friendship and for doing all this. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of all of us to say thank you. Yeah. We look forward to next year, man. We really do. So thank you, man. Appreciate it. Guess who is about to walk on to the screen? I'll give you a moment. I'm going to make a funny joke. James White is watching, all right? Not that James White, though, okay? But it is literally, it's James White. That's his name. And I make that joke with my wife all the time, and she is sick of that joke. So you want to come up? Yeah. So we have, and I'm sure if you've watched, how long ago were you on? It was a couple months ago, right? More than that. Yeah, it was a while ago. So, I'm trying to think now. One of our earlier episodes, for those of you that don't know, this is Kofi. Everybody knows Kofi, of course. But Kofi and I connected through social media, and I had him on one of our earlier episodes, and it was a great conversation. And Kofi is one of the guys, actually Brandon too, as well. I didn't even think about this. Kofi is one of the guys that I feel like I knew, but I had never actually met. And just being here today, Brandon and some of the other guys and Kofi and these are some of the guys like I've known for a while now, but I haven't had a chance to connect with, one-on-one. And so I say that to remind people that might we have conversations like the guys in this room. I'm sure we would all agree that conferences, like we understand the importance of conferences. Like we go, we attend, we get encouraged, we're built up, and we're ready to go back to the church. But for the people that look upon us as a conference of what do you even go to those things for? What do you guys do? Just play 18 holes of golf and then you just go back to your hotel rooms and you go to bed, right? But to meet guys, that's you and I got to meet too, and to have that face-to-face connection, I don't think you can. Until it actually happens, you can't really articulate it into words. So I blabbed long enough. Would you like to blab for a little bit, Kofi?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead and introduce yourself real quick. Talk about your church, and then why don't you just transition into your message that you spoke about?
Yeah. Absolutely. So Kofi Adu-Boahen, 28 years old, married to the wonderful Laura, who probably is not watching this because she's asleep because she works nights as a nurse. So if she does watch this later, love you, honey. I am part of the church planting team at Grace Community Church of the Rogue Valley, which is a very, very young church plant in Medford, Oregon, where we live. We're about 4 months old, and so kind of helping to get the church established. And just love teaching the Bible, love preaching the gospel, and seeing Christ made much of.
Yeah. And what did you talk about for the conference? Let's talk about that.
Sure. So the topic that got assigned to me was an interesting one in that it was originally Brandon's topic. It was his topic, and then he gave me a call a few weeks ago and said, just everything's going on, going to be busy during the conference. Would you mind being bumped up to a main session? And, do you want to open up day 2? I was like, okay. So the topic that was assigned to me was cross-purchase discipline. And so my message came from Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, and that whole theme of running the race. And I really wanted people to come away from that message not with a feeling of I need to pull up my bootstraps and try harder and do better. I think it's very easy to preach a message like that from a text like that. But, the powerful thing about that section is that in Hebrews 12:2, the way in which you run the race is by looking to Jesus, who is the source and perfecter of our faith. That you can't do that without having I made sort of pun during the message, without having the sun in your eyes. Like, if you're not looking to Jesus, if he is not all that is filling your vision, you're not going to be able to run the race effectively, and that's where we get the power for that from. So it was a great message. I enjoyed it. It was a great time, and it's just been a really great weekend sitting under some really great preaching and teaching.
How walk through, if you don't mind, how do you prep for a sermon? So, let me rephrase that. How do you prep for a conference as compared to, the sermon that you preached last week? You preached Jude, right?
Yep.
So, was there any differences between prepping for that and then prepping for this conference?
I kind of follow the same procedure regardless. Just I would probably start a little earlier if I'm preaching for a conference. So, first thing I do is I need to grapple with what is the text actually saying. And so for me, that looks like I copy the text out of my Bible software, put it into a document, double space it, wide margin, print it off. And that's literally day one of my sermon prep. Is just, I'm looking at this, if I have stuff to do, I'll just carry it around with me, and I'm just writing stuff up. It looks like a mess by the time it's done, but that's just me looking at the text and trying to make sure I understand what the big idea is. I think it's Haddon Robinson in his book, Biblical Preaching, that talks about that, the big idea. I'm also, as I'm looking at that text, and this is something that's, for a very long time in my preaching and teaching, I didn't do this as well as I should have, and I'm now trying to be more disciplined about it. I'm also trying to see, not to force the gospel into the message, but how can I get to the gospel from this text? And sometimes you should always be able to get to the gospel from any passage. How you get there may require, again, looking at the text in a much more focused way, trying to handle the text faithfully and not just do what sometimes I saw growing up, which was allegorize everything and then stick Jesus in there and call that. I don't think he's honored in doing that either. But I don't think he's honored by just being assumed and ignored. Jesus is to be proclaimed, not assumed. And so, as I'm looking at the text and I want to understand the text, I'm also trying to see, how am I going to get to the glory of the person and work of Christ from this text? So that's really days 1 and 2 for the most part. At that point, I'm literally just going to sit down, and now that I've got some of the languages under my belt, I literally just take a yellow pad and a pen, and I will just start writing notes on the stuff I'm seeing in the passage. And as I'm reading it, I may see questions that I want to ask. I've done my best to try and study this passage. I still don't have an answer to this question. And that's usually the kind of stuff that then I'm going to pick up commentaries and listen to sermons and try and glean from. But, that's a 2-3 day process. So that's about days 3, 4, and 5. Finally, when I've gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, I've written as much as I can, and I feel like I've gotten a handle on this text and how to get to Christ from this text, I literally open up a Google Doc and I'll just start typing based on those notes. And as I'm sitting there writing them, I'm thinking of illustrations, I'm thinking of cross-references, stuff that I've read. Okay, that was a good explanation of this point that I've got into, trying to fit that in. So all in all, it takes me about a week to, prepare a message. And so conferences are great because you get way more time to prepare that. I imagine that I'm not in full-time preaching ministry at the moment, but I imagine that once I get into the grind of week-by-week sermon prep, that's probably going to look a lot more condensed than it is now. But for now, that's what I do, and it works well for me. So, yeah.
Any other thoughts about the conference?
Oh man, it's just been a rich time. Dustin Benj opened and closed for us, and that makes you feel inadequate. Let's not lie about that. He is, even just from his tweets, he makes us all look bad. He's just he's just such a godly man, and half of us spend our time fighting on Twitter. So, and then getting to meet him and talk to him and realize, oh, Ray, he's the real deal. This isn't just a Twitter persona. This is who he is. So that's been good. So many of the speakers, I have to shout out my man Cole. his message on preaching, for those of you who are watching this, if you get a chance to hear that message, go listen to that. That blew me away. I usually don't tweet during messages, but I couldn't help it. I was like, okay, folks need to hear some of this.
Fire emojis too, because I saw it.
Oh yeah, it was fire. It was lit. It was very lit. I don't think I've ever used that term for a sermon, but that was lit. No, I mean it seriously. If anyone gets a chance to listen to that, they should. Like I had to go up to him and encourage him and say thank you. I need to hear that. It was better than some of the preaching lectures I've heard from like professors of homiletics. It was that good. So this is somebody who's not just telling you how to do this, he's doing it. Yeah. Just every speaker's been a real encouragement, and just the fellowship. Yesterday after we got done, we went out to dinner and got to chat with some of the brothers, and some good conversations. We were really edified and encouraged by that. So no, it's just been rich just to sit under the teaching of God's word for a couple of days, to meet brothers from all around the area and further afield, and just enjoy the Savior.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? I'll let you close.
I guess one passage that I got to, Brother Brian's sitting right there. We got together. When was that? Yeah, Thursday. Yeah, we got together on Thursday, and I told him there's a passage that's just been percolating in my mind, for a number of months now. I just can't get away from it. In Colossians 2:6-7, where Paul says, "Just as you receive Christ as Lord, so walk in Him, being rooted and grounded up in the faith, and overflowing with thankfulness." I think it's very easy, and it kind of hit me in a fresh way as I started thinking about, the conference and what I was going to preach on. It's very easy for us to overcomplicate the Christian life. It's 10 steps to this, 5 keys for this, 25 lessons. It's very easy to overcomplicate being a believer. But Paul kind of just boils it all down. I think must have been you or someone else that I was talking to about teaching through Colossians in a Sunday school class. And when I was teaching through it, those verses stuck out at me. How did you receive Christ? Well, you received Christ by faith. So how do I continue walking in Him? By faith. It's not that difficult. Yes, how that looks on a day-to-day basis is difficult. Let's not undersell it either. But Christianity, in a very real sense, is a faith walk. Yeah. And, just the reality of that has hit me afresh once again. And so if I can encourage the folks who are here, the folks who are listening online, let's not overcomplicate the Christian life. We received Christ by faith, and so let's walk in Him by faith. I'm done.
That's good work. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Kofi somebody left a comment, said it's always good to hear a bit of Kofi. Yes, it was. Thank you, Kofi. Zach, you want to join? So we have an exhibitor. We have a very special guest. Zack is another guy that again, the circle, I think we have. Now, let me say, too, real quick, I'm a Southern Baptist guy, so is that all right? Okay, all right, good. So we have, a lot of similar friends and stuff like that, and I actually, when Brandon was letting me know some of the guys that were going to be here, your name had popped up, and so why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, who you're representing, and how you ended up here at the conference.
So first of all, whether you're a Baptist or a Presbyterian or Dutch Reformed or an Anglican, my concern is, are you a Jesus man? Not are you an SBC guy or a PCA guy or an ACNA guy or whatever. And the sense I get after being here this weekend is that I'm surrounded by Jesus men, or if you grew up in the 90s, Jesus freaks. And have any of you ever been called a Jesus freak to your face or behind your back? So my older brother called me a Jesus freak. He's not a believer. He didn't mean it as a blatant insult, but I can say I am a Jesus freak, though I don't have a tattoo on my belly wiggling around like marmalade jelly or whatever the lyric is. So anyway, isn't that in the song? Am I right? Yeah. See? So anyway, The way I got here as an exhibitor, I go around and represent Greenville Presbyterian Theological Seminary at a lot of conferences, at gatherings of church courts, so general assemblies and synods and association meetings, and it's a real privilege to do that. And typically, the way it works is I'll look at a list of conferences, and I'll say, okay, I want to go to that one and that one. I want to go to this town or that city, and I can build a tour, as it were, throughout the course of the year. Well, occasionally, especially with new conferences, I'll have the great joy of being asked to come. And Brandon, whom I know through social media, asked me to come, and he said, we would really love for Greenville Seminary to have a presence here. And I was more than happy to oblige. This has really been a great weekend. One of the great things about going to a lot of conferences is I'm reminded again and again of those key fundamental doctrines of the gospel. And I get to meet a lot of people that I've never met before. And so I've met a lot of brothers this weekend that it was a real privilege to get to know.
So real quick, one thing, the internet has crashed too, so we no longer are broadcasting outside of this room, okay? But I'm still recording locally, so we'll upload podcast, video, we'll still have the video and stuff like that. But yes, the internet around here has crashed for some reason. So I don't know. But we can see the little yellow exclamation on the Wi-Fi signal. So, did you cut the cord like before you jumped up?
It's my fault. It's the Presbyterians' fault. You can blame it on us.
When you go to conferences, let's talk about that, because I'm always interested to hear like what goes in. Like, do you just sort of, it's January 1st. Do you like map out the entire year of all the places that you're going, or are you getting like did Brandon call you like a week before and say, hey, can you come? Like what's the process involved with you from your home to getting to the conference year long?
So as can be expected, speakers are very busy. They get approached all the time to come and speak at different things. And so you have to get in with them, usually a year out, if not more. There were certain speakers when I worked for another parachurch organization up in Philadelphia where you had to book them 2 years out if you really wanted them to come. Now, exhibitors, that's not usually the case, because if I didn't come to this, maybe I could have gotten somebody else to come in my stead from my team. But in our case, Brandon actually approached me months and months ago. And there's another conference going on right now down back south that I have two of our students representing us at, because I couldn't be there since I had already committed to this, which is fine. I'm happy to be here, break some new ground, be part of something new, which is also very exciting for me. But what goes into it at an organization like Greenville Presbyterian Theological Seminary is having all the materials set aside, organized, and being ready to go. And what should that give you a picture of? Give you a picture, again and again, represented in Scripture, of being ready in season and out of season, being ready to go. And so I always relate my work, not just because I work for a Christian organization, but even when I've worked in secular jobs, to spiritual truths and realities, in order to mine lessons from them. Recently, I preached on the parable of the 10 virgins in Matthew's gospel, and the whole point of that is be prepared, be ready. Don't be caught unawares. Don't be caught without enough oil in your reservoir. You have to be ready. And so that's just as true for an exhibitor at a conference as it is for each of us in our own Christian lives. You must be ready for when you're called upon. That being said, if you call me a week ahead of time to come to your conference or something, I might not be able to make it, because usually I'm booking myself out at least a month out, if not more, for various things going on at church, at the seminary, or around the country.
How many do you do a year on average?
On average, how many conferences do I go to? I'll include things like the Presbyterian Church in America General Assembly as well. So typically you will see Greenville Seminary presence, whether it's me or somebody else, at 5 or 6 conferences hosted by the Alliance of Confessing Evangelicals, 1 or 2 regional conferences like this per year, and then as well general assemblies or synods of 5 or 6 different denominations. So on average, we're looking at, anywhere from 11 to 14 different events that we're going to represent at. We're a small school. We don't go to things like T4G, G3, TGC just because the expense doesn't really make sense for us. We like to go into more intimate settings where we can really get to know guys and really present Greenville Seminary and its benefit, and especially when I'm going into a conference that's not going to be predominantly Presbyterian, I also like the opportunity to tell guys why it would be good for a Baptist to go to Greenville Seminary or a conservative Lutheran or Anglican or non-denominational guy, and really that's what I get passionate about.
That's awesome. Do you have any other thoughts about this conference specifically? Do you have plans maybe of coming back? Or I know it's kind of tough for you to see, down the road and things like that. But was there one thing that stuck out with you, during the conference maybe or leading up to the conference that you just really will take home with you?
So at Greenville Presbyterian Theological Seminary, one of our emphases, and I explained this to the guys earlier today, so they're going to hear it again, or you guys are going to hear it again, but the folks who are listening to the recording, this will be news to them. We are very passionate about displaying the beauty of Christ in his goodness and his glory and his humility and his exaltation before people. And we call and instruct the students at Greenville Seminary to preach that way, to preach with the atmosphere of heaven, as it was said earlier when you quoted Ian Murray, Cole. Ian Hamilton, who's one of our faculty and trustees, deeply involved with the Banner of Truth Trust and with Ligonier Ministries and Evangelical Presbyterian Church of England and Wales, he says that good preaching will take your hearers out of themselves, will bring them into a foretaste of heaven. And so these conferences, even though this is not the means of grace, this is not the church meeting, this is technically a supplement to that, but you get a taste. As you're sitting under the word read and preached, you get a taste, a foretaste of that heavenly communion that we will enjoy for all eternity, that eternal blessedness. So that's what makes these things special, and that's how it relates to my work. As far as what stuck out to me, that precisely stuck out to me for the material I was able to actually catch. I do some work outside of, especially yesterday, I had to catch up on work while a lot of the talks were going or the sermons were going, but today I was able to sit in on a couple of the sermons, and that was a great benefit to me. One last thing, I would be remiss if I did not do this and take the opportunity to do it with your listeners. If you're thinking about theological education, particularly if you're thinking about serving the church as a pastor or an elder or a deacon or a trustee or whatever it is your church's ecclesiology has set up, please consider Greenville Presbyterian Theological Seminary. Visit us at gpts.edu. Fill out the contact form. I would love to talk to you or have one of our admissions counselors talk to you. We have a strong and very passionate contingent of Baptist students, and so don't let the Presbyterian in the name scare you away. You read our books. You might as well sit under our professors. And that I didn't make that up. Someone said that to me here at this conference. And a lot of the other seminaries you're thinking about are Presbyterian too. They just don't put it in their names because they're better at marketing, I guess. But we don't shy away from that identity. We don't want to bamboozle you, but we certainly want to serve you in the churches that you're coming from. And if anything I said resonates with you, either emphasis on preaching or the beauty and glory of Christ and his goodness and his humility, and presenting that to people in your ministry, I would be very excited to speak with you. We do have a full-fledged distance program as well as a residential program. That's worth mentioning. Thank you for the time.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. It was nice to chat with you. And and it's funny because the first guest that I had on was G.K. Beale. And so G.K. Beale is my guy. And so we had some fun back and forth about Baptists and Presbyterians, but that was funny. I appreciate you sharing about the seminary, and I'll put some links into the show notes as well for the site, and then that way people can just click on it and get there directly. So how about we do one more person, somebody who was an attendee, somebody who just heard about it through, however, and you took the time and you drove down. If anybody wants to share, this guy over here, everybody's pointing at him. Everybody's looking at the same guys. I'll only keep you for a couple of minutes, so I appreciate it. So why don't you introduce yourself and then talk about how you heard about the conference, where you're from, things like that.
So my name's Payton Pierce. I am actually a engineering student at IUPUI. I graduate this December with a degree in mechanical engineering. But kind of over the last about year and a half, 2 years, I've kind of felt that poke to get into ministry and really just dive in and serve the church. So I started getting more involved in my church. I lead a small group of 7th grade boys. So student ministry is something that I'm very passionate about. Just seeing students grow in their relationship with Christ is something that's really, really awesome. Yeah. But as far as here, I was just on Instagram, and I think Brandon may have followed me or something, and it popped up on there. And I was like, oh, that's just 20 minutes down the road, and have to check that out. And so I did, and I'm very glad I came. This has been such a very deep theology, that a lot of things that I've learned that I would have probably learned otherwise, or would have been later down the road I would have learned. But it's been good, just the getting to meet people, know everybody. That's been really nice as well. And everybody that spoke this week brought the word, and you could tell the Spirit was speaking through them.
Is this the first time you've ever been to a conference like this?
Yes, yeah.
You got the bite now.
It's all
over.
Yeah.
You're traveling West Coast. You'll be, believe me. Was this your first time? Like, had you heard anybody before, any of the speakers, or did you just come in and this was your first exposure to all the guys?
Yeah, a lot of them. I'd heard a little bit from Dustin, a little bit from Jeff Metters as well.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, this is my first time hearing mostly everybody.
Yeah.
And I'm glad, because I think as I was talking to someone else, and they're like, this is a conference you could easily fill up with 1,000 or more people, and it was just that deep and that good. So yeah, I hope I'm anxious to see the response when the videos are if they're posted or whatever from everybody's speaking. But it was very good, very enriching.
So you bring a unique. Here, let me say that real quick. You bring a unique perspective, because is anybody else a elf? Is anybody else a youth pastor? No? Okay, so you bring the unique perspective of sitting under this teaching and then taking this back to talk to kids exclusively. So what is, if you can't come up with one thing, that's fine, what are a couple of things that you're going to take back from the conference and then apply it to your ministry as you're teaching, middle school students?
Yeah, I think I believe it was Cole's talk. His was so good. Even though his was more on preaching, but if it doesn't show Christ crucified, then you didn't do your job. Yeah. And I think it's kind of the same way even in student ministry. Yeah. And I think kind of from my experience in student ministry and the events I've been to with my students, like camps and stuff, is a lot of them, they don't have that full understanding of what the gospel is. And it's if they leave high school without knowing what the gospel is, and knowing or at least the true gospel, what it is, then it's very easy for them to get deceived into the false gospels or the false religions of the world. So it's something I've gotten to be really passionate about, because it's we see. I think it's one of the statistics is like almost 2 out of 3 kids after 18 are leaving the faith, and it's something that I think needs to be addressed, and it's definitely something I'm very passionate about, seeing students just grow in their faith, and how they can just come to understand the gospel more.
That's awesome. You made a really good observation too, and I think we could talk about this for a very long time. But the focus on youth ministry is not always leaving Christ crucified as the focus, right? We see let's go bowl and let's go, and those are, of course, it's let's have fun. I'm not like one of those old bearded religious guys that says like, no, you can't have fun, you can't dance, nothing like that. But I think again, if the focus is like, let's just gather some people together and have a good time, and then, if they hear about Christ, that's great. And if they grow in their theology, that's great. But really, at the end of the day, if we're not doing those things, what does it matter? So you personally, how are you growing yourself to make sure that you are doing that you are sharing good theology with them? And how do you teach yourself, basically, is the question.
I'd say, and I've heard it said over and over again, I love the ESV Study Bible. That's been a very, very good resource for me, just for daily studies, getting to understand the word more and what's meant from it, and how I can use that to portray that to my boys and my group, and then be like, this is what the word says. This is what it means. It's because that's a lot of things too. Is if they read on their own, if they don't understand, they're more likely going to go somewhere where they may get a wrong interpretation of the word. So for me, that's been a great resource as well, and also getting to know more about apologetics and about to be able to defend the faith, because that's something I grew up in a small town in Texas, so I didn't have that real deep background to be able to defend the faith. So that's something too I've constantly trying to learn more, that way to instill and teach them about how they can be that way once they go off into the world on their own, and have to defend it against other religions or other doctrines.
That's awesome. Do you have, I'll let you close, as I've let everybody else do. Do you want to share just any thoughts about the conference that you didn't get a chance to mention? Any closing thoughts, stuff that you're looking forward to doing when you get back home, with the stuff that you've learned? I'll let you close out.
Definitely. Again, I think Brandon from Cruciform for putting this on, because it's been very good. But I think I've kind of been wrestling with, lately with graduation. Do I go? I've got some opportunities to go directly into ministry, or do I go into be patient and go in and pursue, engineering? But I've kind of had this from coming here. I've kind of had this, just this deep peace kind of rush over me, like, hey, this is what I want to go all in on. This is, it's what when Christ calls you, or when God calls you, it's you go, you listen. So that's something that this has been really good just to hear. I think it was kind of something that was kind of that same thing was repeated through everybody that spoke. It was just that, hey, this is the Gospels. It's the best news. Okay, Christ crucified. It is the news that everybody needs to hear. And if we're not giving our all to that, in whatever form or fashion that might be, then we're not doing our job. We're not doing what God gave us to do in the Great Commission. But yeah, I think that's probably something that's been
very well said.
Spoken to me. Like I said, kind of just a continued message repeated through everybody that spoke this weekend.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, hey, listen, thank you, man. I appreciate you putting you on the spot. Everybody put you on the spot, and you delivered. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much for coming up. So we're at like 45 minutes. So we'll close with this. Does anybody have something that they really want to say? If not, we will call it a night, because you guys have been here much longer than I have. Cole, do you want to preach your message again right now? Like, do you? Because it sounds, yeah. So exclusively part 2. No, but yeah, let me just we'll just close with there, because I think we're good. And like I said, we're about 45 minutes. So yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. And those any links or anything, I'll post them in the show notes below. To all you guys, thank you for sticking around, and for everybody that spoke, thank you guys. I appreciate that. And I'll see you guys on the next one. See ya.